April 1, 1945. As the Allies closed in on Berlin in Europe, the focus of the Pacific War shifted to a small, unassuming island, 340 miles from Japan's main islands, Okinawa. Codenamed Operation Iceberg, the objective was simple: seize the island to establish the final, massive air and naval base necessary for the planned invasion of Japan itself, Operation Downfall. But Okinawa was more than just an airstrip. It was the psychological and geographical gateway to the Japanese homeland. The Japanese commanders understood this, and their defense was designed not to win, but to inflict such catastrophic casualties that America would lose the will to fight. For 82 days, the U.S. Army and Marines fought what became the largest and deadliest island battle of the Pacific War. They faced an entrenched enemy, fanatical resistance, and the terrifying, relentless threat of the kamikaze attacks. This is the story of the last great battle, a preview of the bloody price America was prepared to pay, and the final factor in the decision to use the atomic bomb. The initial American landing was deceptively easy. On Easter Sunday, over 180,000 U.S. troops of the 10th Army landed unopposed. The Japanese strategy, masterminded by General Mitsuru Ushijima, was to concede the beaches and draw the Americans inland, where they would be bled dry in a defense-in-depth network of caves and fortified ridges. The American Navy, however, faced the full fury of the Japanese response. This was the launch point for the unprecedented kamikaze campaign. Waves of Japanese pilots, young men committed to sacrificial attacks, intentionally slammed their bomb-laden planes into Allied warships. The attacks were devastating. Over 30 U.S. ships were sunk, and over 350 were damaged, killing nearly 5,000 U.S. sailors. The Navy was under continuous psychological siege, demonstrating the chilling Japanese willingness to sacrifice everything for the defense of the homeland. Meanwhile, the ground forces moved south, encountering the first of Ushijima's hidden defenses around the formidable Shuri Line. The central feature of the Japanese defense was the Shuri Line, a complex of interconnected tunnels, pillboxes, and caves dug into the rugged terrain. From the high ground, the Japanese rained down devastating artillery and mortar fire, often waiting until American troops were directly on top of their positions before opening fire. The fighting was a grueling, month-long grind that defined the brutal attrition of the Pacific War. Bloody Ridge and Kakazu Ridge, the U.S. 7th and 96th Infantry Divisions, faced weeks of suicidal banzai charges and intense shelling, turning the ridges into meat grinders. The mud and the rain. In May, the torrential Okinawan rainy season turned the battlefield into a quagmire, rendering tanks useless and making movement nearly impossible, all while the fighting continued, hand to hand, for every cave and yard of ground. The U.S. forces were forced to rely on flamethrower teams and demolition charges to root out the entrenched enemy, cave by cave. Casualties mounted at an alarming rate, quickly surpassing every other American casualty count in the Pacific. What distinguishes Okinawa is the immense scale of the civilian tragedy. The battle was fought in the homes and fields of the local Okinawan people. Caught between the relentless American advance and the Japanese military's brutal tactics, which often used civilians as human shields or executed them as spies, the population was decimated. The human cost was horrific. An estimated 150,000 Okinawan civilians, up to one-third of the population, perished. Many were forced to commit suicide by Japanese soldiers, while others were simply caught in the relentless crossfire. By mid-June, the American forces finally broke through the Shuri Line, but the fighting continued in the southern tip of the island. General Ushijima and his chief of staff committed ritual suicide, but the last pockets of resistance fought to the last man. The battle was officially declared over on June 22, 1945. The cost to the American forces was staggering. Over 49,000 U.S. casualties, including 2,500 killed or missing. Okinawa proved that the defense of the Japanese home islands would be a prolonged, apocalyptic bloodbath. The predicted casualty figures for Operation Downfall were projected to be in the millions, both Allied and Japanese. The ferocity of the kamikazes, the refusal of the Japanese soldiers to surrender, and the mass civilian suicides on Okinawa provided chilling evidence to American decision-makers. They concluded that only an external decisive shock could convince the Japanese leadership to surrender without forcing a full-scale invasion. Less than 2 months after the fighting on Okinawa ended, the first atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima. Okinawa had become the ultimate validation of the strategy that ended the war. It was the last great battle, and the final bloody stop on the road to victory in the Pacific.